Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Headline Books Zoom into Books Christmas Extravaganza session. This afternoon, we have some very special guests joining us. And if you all have questions for our presenters throughout the session today, feel free to type them into the comments section under this video, and we'll have a short Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So today I am joined by Headline Books author Matt Dragovits, who is a very good friend of mine and a very talented writer, illustrator, videographer, anything creative, basically he can do it. And our other special guest today is, I'm going to try and get his last name correct, Jeffrey Varabkanich. And he is thank you. He is a Disney guy. He is a Disney animator and illustrator, artist. Wonderful addition to our session today. So again, if you all have any questions for our presenters, please feel free to put them into the chat. Also, if you have to leave early and you can't watch the video through to the end, we will leave the replays up here on our Facebook page, as well as on the Zoom Into Books YouTube channel. So there's lots of ways that you can watch later on. So we're going to go ahead and jump in here and get started. So I'm going to kick it over to my friend Matt. Thanks so much for joining us, both of you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. Very happy to be here as part of this Headline Books extravaganza. I think everybody needs a little bit more Christmas this year. I know at our house, we're decorating early. Everybody's like got the music. It's like Thanksgiving is a little bit of a speed bump right now.
Yeah.
Way to Christmas. It's not getting its proper due this year, but that's all right. So again, so happy to be here with my great friend, Jeffrey. I'll give a little bit of background on Jeffrey before I dive into the book, because Jeffrey is I had the fortune of meeting Jeffrey years ago when he was the head of a massive 3D studio down in Orlando. But Jeffrey's background is original traditional hand-drawn animation taught under the 9 Old Men of Disney. So he's worked on a whole slew of films, and I'm not going to give too much because I want Jeffrey to talk about that when we go there. But I just want to share my screen a little bit just to give you a little teaser of the book, Zach's Quest, that we're going to be talking about today. So right here, that is actually the website. What I want to do is move my little Zoom navigation.
Oh, nice, yeah.
So here is the book, Zach's Quest. So I don't want to tell the whole book, but the premise of the book is that Zach is this mischievous little elf. He's sort of like, if you're going to talk about modern times, like an elf with ADHD, He wants to be involved in everything, but doesn't take the time to, really focus on one thing. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of mirroring of myself in this character because I'm a little hyperactive. Jeff might say a little bit more than a little hyperactive since he's known me so long.
You're just enthusiastic. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep. And I also never wanted to grow up, so I think being an elf was always kind of near and dear to my heart as well. But the premise of the book is basically in the Christmas universe that we've created in this book. I always wondered as a kid, how do the elves get power at the North Pole? They're at the North Pole, they're building all these toys. How do they have the energy? How do they stay warm? All that fun stuff. And in this Christmas universe, Santa's Winter Workshop is powered by energy that they harvest from the Star of Bethlehem. So they have a device called the Divine Reactor that channels the energy from the Star of Bethlehem to power Santa's Winter Workshop. And Zach, in his desire to know and be involved in everything, breaks the device 2 days before Christmas and has to go on a quest to the peak of Mount Frostbite to save the holy holiday. And what was very important to me in developing this story is that I love the fantasy of Christmas. What we all love from children is the Santa Claus and the elves and the flying reindeer and all of that. But I didn't want to lose the messaging of Christ, and Christ first, which is very important to all of us Christians. It's paramount. So I wanted a book that actually kept all of that together and also had some real bad guys in it, a real force of evil to overcome, but that wasn't too scary for kids. So I'm just going to toggle through quickly a little bit of the artwork just to showcase it here. And to give you just an idea, let me see if I can move this. I'm going to move this off screen. You're still seeing my full screen now, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
okay.
That's really nice.
My little Zoom thing off. So I just want to, without them having the chance to read it, I just want to give a little taste of some of the beautiful artwork. Now, I'm happy to say that I created the concepts for all these characters and storyboarded this very roughly, but Jeffrey's just fantastic. I mean, just look at this. It's just, I get excited, and I've been looking at it for a long time, but just the life and the energy and the bad guys are villains, you know? It's just such a fun story. So I'm going to go back now. That was just a little teaser of the artwork, because obviously I want you to buy the book eventually, but I wanted you to kind of get your appetites wet. Yeah. I would like to also take a moment to go over to the website, because we built a pretty nice website for the kids. And I know that not everybody has a budget right now. Some people are keeping things a little close to the pocketbook for the holidays. So Jeffrey and I still wanted to give some stuff away for free to kids and to families in need. And one of the other things that was really important to me is I wanted to have some of these resources free, particularly for like children's hospitals or schools and things like that, because my middle daughter went through a lot of medical issues when she was a baby, and we spent a lot of time in the hospital. And I remember being there going, man, you know, they were very long days, especially around the holidays. So we wanted to put a few freebies on the website for the hospitals and the schools to be able to share. So, and I do encourage anybody who's in our audience today to take this website, to share these resources with anybody that you know that would enjoy them. But as you go down the page, it starts off just with a little synopsis, then it goes to a few samples of the artwork that we just discussed, just so people can see, again, the artwork quality. We have some information on the webpage for anybody who might want to book an author visit. Obviously, author or artist visit, we are doing those virtually right now. So if a school or organization wants to have Jeffrey or myself or Melanie or Irma Torre, who's the colorist on the book, do a school visit, the forms and everything, the information is easily available on the website. We have some more information about our publisher, Headline Books.
Yay.
On the website as well, along with a sample image of the hardbound book that has just been released. Below that, we have some of the reviews that we've received on the book so far. We had some very favorable reviews from the Children's Book Review, from All Things Christmas, from Christian Book Notes. We also have an organization called miserbrothers.com. I'll quickly hit that site. And just because I think a lot of people will be familiar with this once they see it, but Miser Brothers is the actual official historian of all the Rankin Bass franchise. So all of the Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty, all of those TV shows that we grew up with and loved. He's the official historian for the book, for all of their merchandising and history, and he's published some books on his own. But he gave us a fantastic review, which we've shared on our website. So anybody who loves that type of stuff, Rankin Bass and Miser Brothers, I recommend you taking a visit over to their website, because they're just super cool, great group. And also with Rankin Bass, Rick Goldschmidt, who is the name of the historian, I should have mentioned that. Rick, again, super nice guy. He actually, when I had written this in a long format version before the picture book, actually sent this to Arthur Rankin Jr., who reviewed it, the book before he passed away, and wished us luck on this endeavor going forward. So if you go down here, Arthur Rankin Jr., you can see I have a little personalized message that actually it's not connecting right now, but he signed the book, and I have a little, I think I changed the link on it, little message there. We also have some reviews from the Reader's Favorite book review. We got 5 stars from them. We sent a copy up to Santa Claus at the North Pole, the official bishop in Alaska. Santa Claus did a review of the book and loved it. So we have some really fun reviews on the site. But let me continue down to show some of the free stuff I was talking about. So here are some of the coloring book pages for our audience. So if you're like me, you'd probably go right to this one and say, okay, I want to download the link of Zach where he's pelting the goblin in the face with a snowball. And Ashley, I think you'll appreciate what Jeffrey did with this, which we call in animation the squash and stretch.
Yes.
Where you can see just, man, he pelted him, man. So
He squashed them good.
he's good, man. That one would have been the first one for me to print out in color as a kid. But we also have some other really great ones. This is one of my favorite pictures in the book, which is Santa Claus kneeling down and praying for his little elf. So I think that, again, just another great message, great one for people to color. Here we have Angie the elf, and Angie is actually based on my firstborn daughter, Angelina. So Jeffrey, I sent him pictures of Angelina when she was little and modeled her for the book. So that.
And it's amazing, she actually looks like her now as she's older.
See, that's just your artistic genius at work. You can tell the future.
I know, it was amazing. She's so cute now, and she's got such an adult attitude, and it was just fun to see her recently and go like, oh my gosh, she looks like the character in the story now. So it's kind of funny, yeah.
That's so great. And that's something that's really fun with books in general, but with, particularly with this book, is when you have a character who is near and dear to your heart and the author is able to make that character modeled after a person or an animal in their life that's meaningful. So
yeah,
it adds another layer.
Exactly, and I think it was really, for me, it was really important that Matt actually literally went through and said, kind of did rough layouts for everything that he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to do so that even though I was contributing as an illustrator, it was pretty much based on his vision. I think if Matt could do everything, he'd do it himself. But I think he's kind enough to let others get involved and put their little 2 cents in. But I also want to give credit to Irma Torrey. She's just an amazing colorist, and I mean, it's like eye candy when I look at the pictures I see now and the publishing. It's just absolutely. I can't imagine what a child or young, reading the book is going to sit there and see. Because when I was a kid, you don't usually often. The picture is what inspires your imagination. So when you're reading the words, that's why books are so amazing, because everybody can create their own story in their head. But with these amazing, beautiful images, you get this chance to sort of give them a tip off. It's like okay, now here you pick it from there, and then they can imagine the rest. And that's where I think what Matt's done here is really, really special.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. I can say that I was happy to create these original sketches, but for me, watching Jeffrey bring life to it and watching Jeffrey add that mastery of character design, I just sit there. I'm like a little kid every time I watch him draw. And I sit there and go, that line is exactly where it needs to be, at exactly the right line strength, the right curve, and it's amazing when you watch somebody who is that good, because they always make it look easy and they're always humble. And I sit there like drooling. Why doesn't mine look like that? But Jeffrey's done about 1 million drawings in his life, so.
Yeah, I think it's more about the amount of drawings. Eventually, you got to get something right once in a while. So, but I mean, it was still. I mean, like I said, and we did a lot of development in this before you got to the final product. So, I think that's a big part of it too. Is just the amount of work that goes into it. To really try to bring the characters to life. That's the only part that I don't claim to be a great storyteller, but I do enjoy the drawing part for sure.
Yeah, and there's an element of visual storytelling that comes through in the artwork too, which is something else that I really appreciate about this book. Is in illustration in general, you don't want to show people exactly what they're reading because they've already read it. So an illustrator has the freedom to show things that aren't happening in the text. So there's a whole element of visual storytelling that goes along with it, and that's what makes books so special.
And I would even go further to say that, I think it's a story of faith. It's not specifically like a denominational Christian. It's more of an approach about faith and integrity and character. So I think that's really where it's, even though it can be labeled as a Christian book, it's more of just, I think, a story of faith you know, fundamentally putting faith in place and showing children that these are really core elements of the character that you can help build. So the story, I think, then plays two sides. It sort of helps build character. It helps, and at the same time is, you know, giving them a sort of an understanding of the process of Christmas.
Absolutely. And that's something that you don't often get in Christmas books. And I think that, you know, again, like what you were saying, Jeffrey, is just another element like another layer to this story. Because obviously, you know, it comes from a personal place where you've modeled some characters after, you know, Matt's daughter. And it's, again, books are very personal. It's really hard when you're an author or an illustrator to send your work out into the world. It's so subjective. It's like you have this little baby and you just like shove it out into the world and you don't want anybody to say it's ugly or anything. And that's how you feel. And, you know, so it's just really nice when it comes from such a personal place to be so successful. So
and I think also you're right about that. I think the character of the world, because Matt's already gone into the follow-up books he's working on, the series that he wants to do. So it really comes to life. And I really think that's about people too. That a book can be kind of like a person. You know, you can sit there and see somebody who's normal. And then, but if they have so much personality and charm, they all of a sudden they seem even more attractive and more interesting and compelling because of the richness of the character, you know? And so I think that is sort of the intangible aspect of, I think, of what Matt's trying to put together here, long term.
absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and that leads me into, you know, this was originally written as a screenplay, you know, with the hope of having this done as a hand-drawn traditional animated film, which again, actually you and I, that's how we met, going to that year-long program with Don Bluth Studios, who Jeffrey also worked with, Don Bluth. So, you know, that was the original goal. So this was written as a screenplay first, then it was written as a young adult novel, detailed. But everybody said, you know, you really need to gather a following through the children first. You know, this is a story, even though adults will love this because it's sort of, people have kind of compared it, like the longer version of it, to like a Lord of the Rings with Christmas. Like it is sort of epic in its nature and its story. And, you know, not only is this one written as a screenplay, but the sequel is written as a screenplay also, which is actually the prequel to this book. It talks about how the divine reactor was originally created. It talks about when Santa Claus originally went to the North Pole. So when we look at developing the future picture book, the future picture book will be the prequel to this. But, and Jeffrey, we've already done a lot of the concept work, the character design for those as well, which I shared with you a little bit the other day, Ashley. So you got to, I shared that with her, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, I love seeing the behind the scenes stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that something else that stands out to me about the artwork in particular in this book is the fact that a lot of it is happening at night or in dark spaces. And, you know, from an artistic point of view, it's hard to illustrate night sometimes because you don't want it to get too dark. And especially for a children's book, if you think about all the children's books that you've ever seen, more of them take place during the day than at night. Yeah. So I think that's a really unique aspect that you have incorporated into this book. And again, like the art is handled so well because some of those dark scenes, like where they're in the cave, and you've got all those nice like teal tones happening. Those are some of my favorite spreads because again, it's handled so masterfully and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that's it's unusual in these kind of stories, in these books. I think it really does give it its character of its own. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question for Jeffrey here. So whenever you are doing character development, so, you know, you mentioned that Matt has sent you photos of his daughter to use. Yeah. How do you go about developing a character based off of a real person?
Well, I mean, you do kind of look at the characteristics, almost as if you're going to do you know, you see these caricatures, you know, you see it in the malls and things like that, you know, but so you do sort of look you look at the shape structure of the face, but then you try to also find the character, and you try to find something that you can really lock into. But she's just basically really cute and pretty, a pretty girl. So I mean, that kind of also plays well into the Disney model. You know what I'm saying? There's certain, I mean, you can push things some ways, and you can sort of like the little boy in Up at Disney. he's like really interesting because he's not really an attractive character because he's kind of pudgy and he's round and he's, you know, he wants to be this explorer, but he's definitely not like running a triathlon or anything. He's not, you know, but yet he's appealing. So there's this thing that the old Disney guys used to teach us. It's called appeal. You know, which you can. How do you get appeal in anything, whether it's something that's, I mean, evil or sweet or like I said, overweight or maybe undernourished or something, or even just animals and creatures like these, like in our story, these horrible goons. You know, and you have to sort of look at them and say, how do you find an appealing aspect of the drawing? Now, some of it is sort of goes back to, believe it or not, even like Da Vinci or using straight versus curves and a combination of shapes and forms that you kind of learn as a technical aspect, like you would learn to play the piano. But fundamentally, it's also how the eye flows through it. You're trying to create unique to that style, which in this case wanted to be sort of a traditional, really almost a 1940s, if I dare say, sort of an old-fashioned sort of story design book, as if it's been around for a while. I think that's kind of the feeling I got with do something that was, instead of just coming up with a style like Dr. Seuss or like Peanuts, or it's more of a traditional sort of almost like Norman Rockwell cartoon style, you know.
Right.
So I think that's really where we try to reach it, and so that we sort of bring a warmth, a natural warmth. And when you see that Coca-Cola Santa Claus, you know, it's sort of immediately you go like, wow, that's what it is. You can still see his face, and you can see he just feels like somebody you know. So in this different approach, but it was still the same sort of philosophy. How do you get that appeal? And that's what I think the interesting thing you mentioned about the darkness is that the characters are bright, sort of jump off against it. It's sort of the art philosophy of light versus dark, where you can have a dark and a light and a dark and a light. In publishing, you know this as well. I should have a light in front of me so that I'm not so dark, because I have a light behind me, but I don't have a light right here. So, but you know, it's sort of the same thing goes true with the contrast and the things you try to do with design. So I think that's really interesting too, because you do get these really interesting colors that in the book that are almost like emotional, if I can say that. So it has an emotional aspect to it, and I think design has an emotional aspect to it.
Oh, I would agree.
Then at the end, I'm just going to finish that by comment by saying I think everything goes into the eyes, because I think that's fundamentally where everybody's going to look into the eyes of the character, because it does. Did you ever see the Elephant Man, the movie, the old movie, The Elephant Man?
Yes.
It was his eyes, you know, his eyes, even though he was horrible, were the one that Cher did with I can't remember the name of it, who was disfigured, that she had her son, and it's just it's all in the eyes, you know. So you can have a design, but if it doesn't connect with the eyes, and I think that's really what the big difference is. And if you look at the illustrations, I think that's what Matt and we all try to do.
And it's interesting when you were talking about style, you know, because you have, you know, Dr. Seuss is very distinctive, Peanuts is very distinctive. And, you know, when you are developing your style as an artist, it's important not to try. I mean, you can, of course, work on your drawing skills by trying to copy other artists' work as best you can. But when you're actually going out on your own, you don't want your style to look like anybody else's style. And that's why, that's why illustration is so much fun. Because you know, every industry is competitive, and so is illustration, but it's competitive in a different way. Whereas you're competing, but you are so individualized. Everybody's style is different. And you know, when you're developing characters, like you were talking about, you eventually develop a style for this particular character that you're trying to create. And again, it's different every time, which is so much fun.
I would even say that you have to be careful that design doesn't take away from the story. Sometimes there was a criticism in Walt Disney when he did Sleeping Beauty that the design was so different and hard-edged that it took away from the emotion of the romance and the drama, and that it was too much design and not enough. You know, it was like fighting with the story, the emotions, because it hindered the ability to somehow get that feeling. And I think sometimes that is really worth thinking about. You can, that's why sometimes I like even primitive, more styled illustrations, because there's an honesty there that sometimes it lends telling the story well too. You know, but sometimes almost like when I've seen watercolor, a friend of mine is a watercolor artist, and she does it beautiful, but it's very more of impressionistic, and it sort of just lends itself more to storytelling in some ways sometimes, you know. I think that's what we've accomplished in the colors and the feeling, I think.
Absolutely. And, you know, Matt, whenever you are writing, when you're writing these stories, are you thinking about the art while you're writing, or do you just kind of write the whole thing and then go back and say, well, I can take this out because I can show this in the art? Or are you kind of writing it based on what you're seeing in your imagination with the images?
Yeah, for me, it's always the imagination first. When I first learned to write, the first thing I do with any character is I would write like the I am paragraph, you know, like you get your mind inside that character and write, I am this, I am that, and just do like a bullet point list of all the things that are in that character. And I think the thing that's been the most fun for me as I write books, because again, I was originally writing screenplays and longer format stuff. So trying to write something short, trying to condense this at first was a real challenge for me. And, you know, obviously we went through a couple rounds of revisions to bring this home. And be able to, your mom was very helpful with that, you know, letting me know to, you know, not say what is already being seen visually, you know, because, and let the characters say it themselves, don't say it for them in the description, you know. But the thing I think I love most about writing in general, though, is that once you've created a well-rounded character, they tell the story for you. Sometimes I feel, it's weird, but sometimes I almost feel like I've stepped out of this story and am only chronicling what they're doing, because you've already developed them so much that they're just taking it away. And I'll find out that sometimes bullet points that I've put for later in the story that I would expected my character to act on, he can't do it quite the same way, or she can't do it quite the same way, because it's not now part of the character that they've become. And that's what's so fun, is the surprises that your characters give to you, even though you made them. It makes them really feel like they are real. Like I don't look at them like they're pictures on a page. It's almost like, no, somewhere Zach exists. It might just be in my mind, but they feel so rounded, you know, because you've built them in your imagination, you've written about them on the page, you've sketched them, then you work with somebody like Jeffrey, who just makes them so dimensional, you know. And again, it's hard to put into words. I mean, it's just, I think it's what we all feel. It's just that love of, if you love to read, you love to write. You know, because when you finish a book, it's hard to say goodbye to those characters. It's hard to, you know, that's why you always, I think, sometimes want that sequel, because you're like, wait, they had a great adventure. What other kind of trouble can we get Zach into, you know? And if I can, I know I was having a little bit of a speed connection for some reason. What happens when you share a house with people during COVID and your kid loves online video games? I might have been bottoming out. But can I share my screen for just one more second? Because I want to point the audience to the videos that we put on the website that will show people as you go further down the Zach's Quest page. Here are some of the instructional videos from Jeffrey. So it has how to draw Santa Claus, how to draw Angie, how to draw a reindeer. You know, these are scrolling through, so you'll see multiple ones. And then these are all the characters from the book on the top row. Then beneath that, we did how to draw the nativity scene. And beneath that are some videos Jeffrey and I did in the past together, which are how to draw dogs, cats, dragons, and aliens. So I cannot emphasize enough how great these videos are. Like, I've watched them multiple times while shooting them, editing them, and still watch them, because the question the person asked earlier about how you put that personality into a character, watch these videos, because it shows Jeffrey in, you know, wireframing the characters out, building upon them, putting in those details that make them a personality, and putting that energy into them. So these are great videos. They're all free. They're all on YouTube with playlists. So once you watch one, it'll take you into the next. But again, I just think they're just phenomenal, and I could watch them over and over again. So I highly encourage anybody watching today who loves to draw any illustrators, or even if you're a writer, to watch how a character is built and to see that dimensionality that these characters are not just lines on a page. You can look at them even in these little thumbnails. They are popping out of the page at you. So, and then
and the fun part was actually, I just wanted to say,
oh no,
these were not planned. These were not planned. These were all spontaneous. We just said, okay, let's draw the characters. Matt said, draw this, draw Santa Claus. So these were not like set up, you know, where you just kind of follow it. This is literally these drawings are being created as we started to draw them. That's
I love that. Oh, that's great. That's what I was going to ask. So when you are creating drawing videos, you know, do you pre-plan? Do you have like a super light version of it underneath that you try to trace over? And so see, that just shows the mastery of this ability that you have, because when you're just drawing cold, it's hard to do it like, you know, on the spot live without messing up. And again, like these just look fabulous. And I've watched several of these and they are absolutely, like Matt's absolutely correct. These are really great. They're informative. And again, you make it look so easy, and it makes it something that people who don't think that they can draw, it makes it feasible for them to be able to draw. And I think that's something that's really important to show people, that when you break it down step by step, you can achieve this. You know, obviously it takes years of practice to get as good at it as you are, but you've got to start somewhere. And by watching these, it's a great first step if you are new to art.
And I think I would share Matt's feeling too about his writing. And I think that a lot of times when I did these drawing anyways, I'm off even at the end. I'm surprised. I look at it and go, wow, that guy's he's alive on his own. So you kind of see that it takes on its own life. You know, it's really interesting. I think all artists say that. I mean, our writers and musicians, and I think when you're really trying to make something that's alive, it becomes alive. Otherwise, it feels like it's a copy of something, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's that authenticity that makes it special.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for the artists at home who are asking about it, you know, you could see some of just like the things that Jeffrey focuses on when designing a character, and some of the things that we've learned actually as well. You know, what Jeffrey was talking about earlier, the principles apply to any of the drawings that you'll see that are a good design. You got a straight line here on the arm playing against the curves, straights and curves. You got a pattern started, but then it smooths out here, so you don't do the same thing all the way around. You know, you're trying to break symmetry. You know, one foot's pointed this way, the other one's coming towards you a little bit more. You know, that you don't have a straight on view looking right at the camera, at the audience. You know, all those little details about design that come into this. And for somebody like Jeffrey, I mean, like this amazes me. If you see where my cursor's pointing down here, you got one little curve here and another little curve here, and look at the volume that just created in the bottom of that pants leg. Now, it looks simple, but I would draw that a dozen times and it would not look as good as that looks right there. And but Jeffrey, you can see he's made that game plan. You know, he's put down his light lines first, and then he's going through his cleanup paths to really build on top of it. And Jeffrey, maybe you would want to talk a little bit while I have this paused about what you think, again, goes into making that character appealing. Like if somebody's doing something for a children's book, how would you make a child character appealing as opposed to, say, you were drawing an adult or something more realistic?
I know. I think that I'm going to go way back to when we first started at Disney, and Eric Larson was my mentor, and he worked with Walt Disney directly from 1933 until he died in '66. So he always said that, because he did Figaro, the little cat in Pinocchio, and he said that he says most importantly, you have to identify with the character. You have to somehow feel like you know the character and who it is, so that it's already alive in your imagination, your mind. And he imagined that Figaro was actually his little nephew, who was a stubborn little, troublemaker. And so he basically, when he did the bed scene, when he's frustrated and he's kicking the sheets off of his, his little bed and all that, that's his nephew, and everything, and how he was always frustrated about Pinocchio and why is Toto spending more time with him than me, and all this other stuff. I mean, it was really that he saw that. So I think that was the first thing that And he never talked about drawing. That's the thing that really inspired me about Eric, was he never said anything about, I mean, he would later on, he would say, you know, try this, try that, look at this. I'll see, just like Matt noticed that those curves that create volumes. But he never leaned on that part to make the character come alive. It was always the personality in your mind that you believed it's real. So even if he was drawing us like a stick figure or something, he would even talk about, well, this guy's little butt would be coming here and doing that and pushing up in there, and ooh, feel the shoulders and how he's doing that. And it was all sort of as if it's already alive. And I think that's kind of what you do in story. And you have to, it's a whole different process. I always often think like you have to learn to play the music on a piano. And then at some point, if you're really going to make music, you have to forget everything you learned and just have something to say emotionally, you know. So I think that's the premise of what we're trying to do. And I bet you as you get to 3, 4, 5, or 10, it's going to be, we'll look back and go, oh, we should do the first one or something, because it'll become more alive or something later on. You'll get more into it and know it more. I'm sure Lucas felt the same way about Star Wars, or I wouldn't be surprised if the Harry Potter girl with the name Roland, she didn't want to go back and redo the first book or something, you know, or who knows, you know. So I do think that there is a process of getting to know your characters and understanding their motivation.
And that comes, you know, that rings through whether you're writing or illustrating. You know, you've got to learn about your character. So, you know, when you're writing, you can list characteristics, you can list quirks, you can list, you know, personality traits. And then when you're drawing, you do, you know, model sheets, you do a 5-point turnaround, because you have to know what they look like from the side, from the back, if they're bending over, if there's, you know, the whole squash and stretch, you know, every position. And the more that you draw them and the more that you write about them, like you said, the more you get to know them. And I also have to say how cool it is that you worked with Figaro's dad. That is the neatest thing ever. So
yeah. Well, he was a great mentor to a lot of us, including John Lasseter, and actually he worked with Don Bluth. In fact, I mean, he was, you know, Eric was the sort of he was the guy who sort of everybody felt carried the torch of what Walt was for the studio, and in terms of what his intention was for animation, because he really was the one that re-staffed everything. And of course, out of that came Don Bluth, and then out of that came Spielberg and all these other studios, and you know, and everybody. And now we have a whole industry, and it's computer animation. But if it wasn't for the beginning, the birthing of this idea through people like Eric Larson, he wasn't doing it for the money. I mean, it was doing it because he really had a passion. And he felt that if they really felt if they made something that was true and passionate, like I hope we're doing, then I think that people will eventually identify with it and feel that. And that's when you have a special thing, we hope.
absolutely.
And Jeffrey, when you were training with Larson, is that the same time that Tim Burton and Lasseter were there as well? So Jeffrey worked with, you know, all these other guys in the industry throughout all those years with John Lasseter. For those who don't know, that's who founded Pixar. That's who Lasseter is. And Tim Burton, you know, we know a lot of he doesn't do animation as much per se, but he's done a lot of really cool films, you know, a little bit more dark and quirky, but a lot of fun stuff.
But if you look at Tim's films, actually, ironically, even though they may have a darker thing, they still have really the basic emotional sort of arcs that, like if you look at Edward Scissorhands, even you see that there's like a sort of a sympathetic aspect to the character. You know, there's a subtlety to it that, I mean, he definitely did go dark and really crazy sometimes, but I think that the core of what he learned at Disney in the beginning was this sort of character connection. I think Frank Thomas used it as something like identifiable. I can't remember what it was. He says you have to get your audience to look at a character, and I think it's the same thing in books, and identify with it by somebody that they know or knew or themselves.
Absolutely. Because again, it's all about that personal connection, regardless of if it's like based off of somebody or if it's yourself trying to embody this person or this animal that you're creating.
Yeah, or a doorknob.
Anything. Yes.
Alice in Wonderland. You had a doorknob.
Not a very active doorknob. Exactly. Somebody has to emulate this doorknob.
Yeah. So true.
Great.
One of the other really cool things that I learned from Jeffrey, and that was reinforced by Don Bluth, and it's one of the things I struggle with and have to consciously force myself to stop to do when you're coming up with a character, is literally close your eyes and visualize it in your head. Sometimes you get so excited to build a character, you sit down and you just start drawing and it doesn't work, and you draw again and it doesn't work, and you say, why is this not working? But I know when we were taking Don's class, he would go, I'll be right back, I'm gonna go into the room, and he would literally go into his bedroom. He said, lay on the bed, turn off the lights, close his eyes, and sit there for 10 minutes, visualizing the characters till he had such a firm imprint of that character on his mind. And then he would come back and draw it. I know he said that in class, and he also said that in some of his instructional DVDs. And he also mentioned that when you're drawing, don't look at the page as a 2D surface. Look at your paper as a 3-dimensional surface, and you're trying to draw into it and away from it. And that helps you with your volumes. Again, it's easy to hear it. It's a little bit trickier to do, but those were some of the great things that both Jeffrey and Don had taught us during our sessions, and I think was worth sharing with the audience today.
Certainly, because again, it's something that you have to practice so much to get to the place that you want it, because a lot of times you can visualize things in your head and it takes so much time to get those out onto paper. But the more that you, again, like Jeffrey was saying, the more that you get to know your character, the more that you're going to want to draw that character. And, practice makes perfect. It's like a sport, or like Jeffrey was saying, playing the piano, you have to have all these different elements that end up coming together into perfection, like Figaro. Figaro, oh my gosh, I love Figaro.
He's a cutie, I tell you. But he's not boring either. He's got a lot of attitude,
No, but again, it's just like your work, Jeffrey, is fabulous, paired with Matt's your wonderful story, and it's really it's just a great book. And again, the emotion that is behind it is really the driving force, and that is what makes it a well done book overall.
Yeah, good job, Matt.
Yeah, Matt, you're still on mute, just FYI. Yes. It's the Zoom thing, it's the new way of the world.
I try to do that so I don't create a feedback loop for you guys when you're speaking from my speakers. So no, it was so fantastic working with Jeffrey on this project and the other videos that we've done over the years. And I definitely do hope to see this become a success so that we can, like I said, I'm fleshing out the sequel, but obviously you want to build up an audience on the first one first, but I definitely have everything in place to go into the sequel for this. I know, Ashley, we were going to talk a little bit. I know we've talked about the character design, a little bit about story design and that, but for our audience, as it comes to books, like what do you say, with this book, I had total creative liberty, and that's what I wanted originally, because I was afraid that some publishers might not like the religious, that it is religious, for some reason it's weird, you kind of got to walk that line of like, okay, is it too religious or is it not religious enough? Because if somebody is really hardcore religious, then they might not like to see scary goblins. You don't know. So you really have to kind of walk that threshold to make sure that you find that audience for the book. So in your experience in working with publishers and with agents, maybe our audience would be interested to hear a little bit about your take as far as developing children's picture books.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a different world from independent publishing versus publishing with a big 5 New York publishing house. If you are, Matt, like you said, you had a very specific vision for this book. And so independent publishing was the perfect way for you to go. If you are with a big 5 house, then it's a big team working on things. And I have some images that I can share, because I'm currently working with Macmillan on a picture book called Frankenslime. And I am super excited about this book. This was my first effort in this world, and working with an art director. And like Matt was saying, it's a completely different experience having an entire team at this level behind you. And I really enjoy it, and I'm excited to do more more work in this world. So the main character for the story Frankenslime is Victoria. So I had to create a little slime scientist girl. And Victoria basically experiments and she makes wonderful imaginative slimes until one day one of her experiments goes awry and comes to life. So I had to create this fantastical slimy world. And so these are some of my very early sketches of the main character. And she has a sidekick named Igor, which is appropriate. And Igor is her dog. So I've had to play around with, you know, developing my my dog character. I wanted him to be kind of quirky and funny. He's not mentioned very much in the text, which is wonderful because I was able to kind of take this character and do what I would want with him visually. So he's the one that like all the bad stuff happens to in a funny way. And so I got to really be creative with that character, and then did some more sketches of how they would interact with one another, the size of them together. So this is how they ended up looking in final art. So you can see the process. And I'm really fortunate to have a great team at Macmillan that I have learned so much. So this is an example of some great art direction. So this was my very, very first extremely rough sketch. Obviously, this is not pretty. This is me getting my ideas out there on paper. It gets better, I promise. So we go from here to here. So this was my sketch for this spread. And Macmillan does have like a first look type of sequence up on their website of Frankenslime right now. And this is one of the ones that's on there. So I'm able to show this to you guys. So this was my first attempt. And then this was my attempt with the end pages. So when you first open up the book, this is the part that's that you see first. And it's a great introduction into the story. So this is kind of like what my sketches looked like overall. So this was, again, my original. And this was after my art director explained that we need to see her more in the frame. And a big one is I needed to leave some space because I forgot to leave room for the next. So again, everybody who is in the art world is constantly learning something. And in this particular case, this is what I learned.
That's
so
great.
yeah, you know, you have to start somewhere, and you know, learning that after being directed in that way, I'm more conscious of that in my work moving forward, which has helped. So then you add color and it changes everything.
Wow, beautiful.
So thank you. So you really see, you know, a huge difference in the world that you're creating. And I had a really good time with the I love this teal tone, and that's why, Matt, in your book, I love those dungeon cave scenes, because it's very similar. Like this teal color is so great. And you know, Jeffrey, when you're adding colors and stuff, you think about what colors are going to work with each other, and you know, you get your color wheel out and you have your complementary colors. Is, you know, blue and orange is always nice together. And so it's about creating this world. So again, the first round of my color process was way too dark. So the art director explained that it needed to be more of like a candy shop type palette for this book. And that, when she said that, clicked. And the art director is Mallory Grigg at Macmillan for this, and she is just phenomenal.
It's amazing. So, I love the hair.
Oh, thank you.
The hair is like brilliant. It's doing that.
And it's like you were saying, I had to embody this character to get to know her. I put a lot of myself in this character, where she makes little notes to herself, and she writes and draws pictures and tapes them to the wall, which is something that I have done and still do. So like on her desk, like she always has her little pad and pencil with her. So she's obviously bored right here. So she wrote bored on her little on her little tablet here. So it's, you know, it's bringing in some of yourself into these characters, which is fun. So another color example is with this one. So the problem here was that again, Frankenslime has a very Halloween vibe to it. So again, it was that struggle of working in a dark atmosphere. So the struggle here was that I didn't want her hair to blend into the background. So I created light bulb slime so that I could make a highlight right here.
Perfect.
Yeah, so again, it's something that you don't see, you know, you don't run into this problem in the sketch process because you haven't thought through that color element yet. So you just get directed, you know, in the right space, and it's a dark space, so we need a light. So this is the cover of Franken Slime, and again, I'm super excited and super proud, and it will be out on July 13th, 2021.
Yay.
Yes, I am extremely excited, but again, the process of working with an art director has been an amazing learning experience for me, because it opened up my eyes to think in a new way, because once you develop your own style, you develop your own process, and you become really comfortable in that process. And when you have an art director who can suggest things to you like, oh, well, if you move this character over here, then you have more space over, and it makes you think in a different way, which again, I really have responded well to, and I feel like my art has improved so much after doing this project that I have been able to apply to my upcoming projects. So
I have to ask, was that your idea, unicorn poop?
yes, it was.
Only stinks a little. Still stinks a bit.
But I like that it's fragrance free, so it's perfect.
Yes, I got to that's why I love, the author is Joy Keller, and she writes in such an imaginative way. And I loved the setup that she would give these scenes, because I felt like it was like passing the baton. It's like here's, you know, page 1. So then what happens over here? And then it's like my turn to take the baton. And I'm like, okay, so we have this opportunity to have these multiple types of slime. Of course, they all need a name. So yes, unicorn poop slime. I have later in the book, I have invisible slime free if you can find it. like bringing in like fun, you know, fun aspects, which, you know, if you are an illustrator listening today, rereadability is a huge thing in picture books. You don't want people to just be able to read your book once and feel that they have been fulfilled. You want them to want to go back and read it again. And I think that, you know, Jeffrey and Matt, that's something that you really brought to this book, is there's so many things to look at that of course you want to read it again and go back and see something different every time.
Yeah. Well.
And I will say, you know, the production quality for this hardbound book is just amazing to see the vibrance of the colors, the quality of the paper. You know, when you buy a book that you want to have to be able to read multiple times, but especially like holiday books, you know, that you read over and over again every season with your kids and multiple kids, it's nice to know that it's going to last. You know, I mean, I do have bins full of books for our kids, because obviously we're big readers too. But like, there's some books that I've passed on from one kid to the next that are just like kind of hanging by a thread, you know, like for Halloween, it might be like Room on the Broom, or for like Christmas, it might be like Good Luck, the one Santa's Stuck, you know, where he gets stuck from eating too much food, he gets stuck in the chimney. But you read them so many times. So knowing that this is such a high quality book, you know, it's really a joy to see as well.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Well, we are at our hour mark here. So I want to thank you both so much for coming today. This has been a really fun panel. It's a really, really fun and beautifully done book, Matt. So we congratulate you on that. And again, I hope that you guys have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. And
you too.
Thank you. It's been so great to chat on Zoom. And, you know, this is something positive that has come from the pandemic, is we would probably not have done this had it not been for our current situation. So, you know, I wish you both luck with the upcoming books, and I'm obviously very excited to see.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate the time. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Ashley. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas.
Yes. Bye, guys.